Well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll go over a few housekeeping options. Today's webinar is going to be on events in medias res, which is Latin for in the midst of things. We'll be talking about managing an event once it's already set up and you have registrants and kind of you're wanting to manage events as it's happening. So if you're looking for a webinar or training video on sort of how to create an event, we have tons and tons of materials on that already, including the webinar that we did last Wednesday. So if you're looking to kind of get more information about how to build an event, go ahead and take a look at some of those other materials. Today, we're going to be looking at existing events and the tools you can use to manage your registrants and make changes. But before we get into the actual details, let's go over a little bit of housekeeping. So all of your microphones are muted, and we do like to keep it that way. If you have questions, please feel free to enter them into the Zoom chat window. Samantha is there, and she will be answering your related questions to this webinar as we go. And then any questions that could use a bit of a demonstration, we will have a bit of a Q&A at the end where you can enter more questions, and we will demonstrate things towards the end of that. The runtime for these webinars, we usually shoot for about an hour, so just keep that in mind. And we will also be recording this webinar, and it will be available on our YouTube channel along with the rest of our webinars and our other training videos. You can always go and look at our upcoming webinar schedule by going to clubexpress.com and clicking on the little calendar option in the upper right-hand corner. We try to keep a running schedule for all of our upcoming events, so make sure to go there. An extra reason to go and take a stop and take a look there is to register for our webinars. So sometimes we have the option for you to enter things you would like to see about the topics that we are training on. So, for example, today we're doing events, and if you have a specific event question, you can register ahead of time, and we can build that into our presentation. Our YouTube channel is on youtube.com. If you search for clubexpress.com, that is with the dot spelled out, D-O-T-C-O-M. You can find us there and subscribe to us. That is where we keep all of our training materials. And a great reason to subscribe is just so you can stay up to date anytime we have any sort of Club Express updates or version announcements. We will put those on that same channel. So it's a great way to see all of our most recent training, but also stay up to date on the changes that we are going through here at Club Express. The last thing is we do love to get reviews from our users. So if you have a Club Express website and you have, experiences with it and you have opinions on how it works, we love to get reviews however you feel about us. It just helps other people discern if Club Express is the right tool for them. So feel free to come to clubexpress.com/reviews and just let us know how we're doing. Before we get started, I do want to take a second to talk about our next kind of bootcamp family presentation. So we will be doing in January a 5-week course on designing web pages and designing home pages. We'll be talking about kind of all the different things that go into creating a complex and beautiful website. So that is one of our courses. It is a $99 course through December 15th, which the key night of you will notice is tomorrow. So we have a discounted price going on at the moment, and that price is good through the end of day tomorrow. Starting Friday morning, that price is going to jump up to $129. So if that's something that you think you're interested in, give your board a call, go talk to whoever you need to talk to, and get signed up for that so you save your club a little bit of money. Again, starting on Friday, that price is going to go up. All right. So now that we've gone over some of our kind of initial stuff, we can actually get into the meat of our webinar. So we're going to be talking about event management. So this is, again, I said this kind of at the top, but this is focusing on an existing event that you have people that are planning to attend, and you want to either make some sort of changes to the event as it is or manage your registrants. So we're going to be talking about things like modifying registrations for people that have already signed up. We'll be talking about how to manage a wait list if you have an event with a capacity. We'll be talking about how to view your attendance tracking and how to track attendance when people show up in person or show up virtually to your events. We'll go over how to check the waivers that people sign. So if you have an event that has some sort of liability or sign-off waiver, and you're collecting either signatures or checkboxes for those waivers, we will go over how to track those and make sure that the people showing up have signed the correct waivers. We will go over how all of the kind of different options we have for event reports and the difference between event reports and event exports. And then the last thing we'll take a look at is the after the event option, which is kind of a, not truly in media res, but it's something you can set up ahead of time so that once the event is done, you can present kind of a review of the event that occurred. So you can do things like share a photo album for pictures that were taken at your event, or you can share even a custom page or a web page that displays the information about the event. So if you have like, this is how many people attended, or any sort of information that took place after the event. So let's go ahead and get into it. I did just a note here at the bottom one last time. Our last week's webinar is already on our YouTube channel. So if you are looking for, I promise this is the last time I'll say this, but if you're looking for event configuration or tips on how to create an event, go take a look at that. It had a lot of great information that Sam presented last week. All right, so let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about and kind of demonstrate is how to modify an existing registration. So once someone signs up for an event that you're hosting, they are signed up, and we don't have an option for members to go in and add things after the fact. So they need to select all of the options that they want when they first sign up. That doesn't mean we lock that option out. As an administrator or an event coordinator, you do have the control to go into that event and make changes to those people's registrations. A note about that is there's a lot of different changes you can make. And whenever you either cancel someone or remove something from someone's registration, they're going to get a refund in the form of a ClubExpress credit. So that credit is going to sit on their profile, whether they're a member or a non-member. And the next time they make any sort of membership purchase or event registration purchase or storefront purchase, that credit will be available for them to use. And so that's just something to keep in mind when you're doing that. And the vice versa is true. So whenever you edit a registration and you add someone to a registration or add an item or add an activity to a registration, they will also incur a charge for that amount as well. So when you're making these changes, you want to make sure you know whether or not there's some sort of fee associated with it. And if there is, you'll want to keep in mind that they are going to get a notice about that charge. All right, I'm going to go ahead and swap my screen over to our demo website for today so that we can walk through a few of those changes. So you should now be seeing our Northwest Bike Club. This is not our Northwest Balloon Club that we're normally used to. This is the bike club that we're using today. It has just a few different features that I wanted to show off, especially because we're setting up the event that I set up for is just kind of like a little bike cycle event. So this is a convention that I set up. And the reason I wanted to do a convention was conventions tend to be very complex events. So I set this event up as a multi-activity event. And you can see when we look down here in the details, there are a lot of options available to us. There are different days for this event. There are different activities. Some of them have different prices. And you can see here, there's even a helmet that you can purchase that has different prices for different people to purchase this helmet. So this is an event that is already set up, and I've already collected registrations for this event. What we're going to do is we're going to go in and take a look at how to change registrations that have already taken place. So as an administrator, or if you are an event coordinator, you should have this option when you're looking at the event on your calendar that says show admin options in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this is going to take us to our familiar screen. This is the same screen we used when we built this event, but you also have all of these buttons across the top that are available for you to make changes to your event once it has already begun. You'll notice in the upper left-hand corner over here, we have this registrations button. And this is the first place we're going to go to kind of make changes to someone that has signed up for our event. So I'm going to click on registrations here. And I can either search by someone's name if someone has called in and wanted to make a change to their registration, or send you an email and they want to change to their registration. I'm just going to hit search so I can see everyone. And I'll see here's all my different registrations. You'll see different people have paid different amounts. We have different people that have signed up for multiple people here. And if we want to make a change to any of those registrations, there's two different types of changes we can make. So on the icons over here on the right-hand side, the first change you can make is just to cancel someone. That's a very simple change. All you do is you click on the little cancel icon. It's going to say, are you sure you want to cancel? Yes or no. If you hit yes, it'll ask if you want to send them an email about their cancellation. So if someone has called you or emailed and said, please cancel me, they may already know about that. But if someone is being canceled without their knowledge, you may want to hit yes on the next screen to let them know that that has been canceled. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel. Let's go ahead and cancel Susan Adkins here. She signed up for 2 people and paid $175 for different items and activities. And on the next screen here, I see this send email notifications option. And if I hit yes here, now Susan is going to get an email letting her know that she has been canceled, and a credit for the amount that she paid has been added to her account. So if we were to go look at Susan Adkins, we would see a $175 credit in her payment history screen. You'll notice now we don't have that X here to cancel because she has already been changed to the status canceled. And we no longer have the pencil here because once it's canceled, you can't make any changes. I don't have any set up in this way, but if you ever have someone who you have is partially paid, meaning they've paid for a part of the event, but not the full thing, you'll notice you can't make changes to that either. The only time you can make a change to someone's registration is if they are in the fully paid status. The other kind of change we can make is to alter an existing registration. So the rest of these registrations here are all paid, and we can come in here and make changes to these registrations by clicking on the pencil icon. Whenever you see the pencil on ClubExpress, we almost always mean make some sort of change. When you click on that pencil, you're going to get a screen that says, I want to blank. And you get this really nice little dropdown with a whole bunch of different options. So most of these options are either adding or removing or making a change. So the first two options we get here are remove someone from the registration, which would remove the entirety of that person's registration. So if we choose this option, we know that this person signed up multiple people, and we are presented with a list of the people that signed up for this event. These are all the sub-registrants underneath the primary person that registered. So these are all the additional people that are guests for the person that registered. And if we select one of these people, and if we hit remove, it will remove Genevieve Carlson from this registration. And if I click remove here, now Genevieve has been removed and is no longer a registrant on that event. The other options we have are to remove someone from an item or activity. If we choose this option, we get that same tool where we can see all of the people that have been registered underneath our primary registrant. But this gives us the option to remove an activity that they signed up for. And so we can see that Fabian up here has signed up for not only the admission to the event, but they have also purchased a helmet. And they have also purchased or signed up for all three of the activities on day one. And so if this person decides, actually, I'm not going to be able to take the brewery trail on day one, I need to, go to a different meeting or something like that, we can come in here and remove them from that registration. Both the removing from the entire registration and removing from the activity will issue a refund for only the portion of that person that we're removing. So for example, the CycleCon helmet is $125. If we were to remove this, it would issue a credit to the primary registrant for the amount of this CycleCon helmet. So it's not necessarily going to go back to Fabian, because whoever the primary registrant is that we're dealing with, and we can see that back here, this registrant is always going to be the primary that's going to get that refund. And you have multiple people signed up underneath that primary. In every case, the primary registrant is the one submitting payment for all of the people that they are signing up along with themselves. So if we look at the Brown family over here, and we click on the pencil and we remove someone from the activity, even if I removed an activity for Andrew, it would still go back to Bobby Brown because Bobby Brown is our primary registrant. The other options we have when we're making changes are to add someone, and this just does the exact opposite of what we just walked through. We can add an additional person to a registration, and if we are adding someone, we are presented with the option to add a member or add a non-member or a member guest. So any type of registrations that you have already set up for your event will be an option here for you to add to that person's registration. So if we select another member from our list, let's go grab just Martin Smith. We'll say I'm adding myself to this. And then you'll see there's the available registration type that is for a member, and I can purchase a member ticket. And then I'm going to get this screen where I can select all of the different registration types that are available to me. So these are all of the different activities that I can sign up for. Most of them are free. There's my helmet that I can sign up for. And this is how you add a person to a registration that is already existing. So if Bobby Brown wanted to bring Martin Smith, but he didn't sign up Martin Smith the first time, he would have to contact an administrator, and an administrator or an event contact would be able to come in here and add this person and select whatever activities that the additional person wanted to sign up for. Similarly, if someone has already signed up for the event, but let's say didn't get a helmet like they wanted, so let's say Sally Brown didn't necessarily get a helmet yet, We can see we have, still have 7 helmets available from the way we set up this event. We can come in here and say, I want to add a helmet to Sally Brown's registration. Again, this is going to get charged to our Bobby Brown person because Bobby Brown, again, is the primary registrant. But if someone who is a guest is going to add an item, we can say, Sally wants a helmet and Sally also wants to go on the cross-country ride. And if we proceed to payment, it's going to take us to a payment screen where it's going to let us know all of the changes that we made. It's going to update the entire transaction for this option, but we're only going to pay for the difference that has not yet been paid. So Sally is getting a helmet that costs $125, and we can choose to submit payment for that here. If we choose not to submit payment for it, it'll take us back to our registration screen. And so now, because I've made a change and I did not submit that payment for it, it is going to be marked as partially paid. This person owes $125, and we get that $sign that you're probably familiar with from the people manager or from our transaction search screen. If you see this $sign, that means this person still owes for this event, and you'll see their registration has changed to partially paid. You can then click on this $sign, which will take us back to this payment screen. This is the screen we were just on. If he gives us cash, we can choose to receive cash, or that person can log into their website on their profile and they can pay for it that way. But if we are recording that payment for this person, now we have recorded that payment. Bobby Brown is once again marked as paid, and we can continue to make changes to that registration. So that's where we can go to add something that they forgot to add to the registration. If they forgot to bring a certain guest, or they forgot that someone wanted a helmet, they would have to get in contact with an event coordinator or an administrator to add that option. The last 3 options here are for making changes. So the first 2 changes are changing a registrant's name. So if someone has signed up and they signed up under the incorrect name for some reason, we've got Bobby here, and we can say, actually Bobby is, Robert. And we can make that change. And now if we look at Bobby, it's Robert Brown instead of Bobby. The other change we can make is we can change an answer to a question. So we can come in here and say, I want to change the answer to the food allergies question. And I want to change that for, oh, that didn't update just yet, but let's say we'll change that for Andrew Brown. We can say, please list any food allergies, and we'll say he's gluten-free. And so now our reports will reflect that Andrew Brown, underneath Robert Brown's registration, is gluten-free. And so now we know, that type of answer. You can change any answer that someone submitted to this registration. The last thing you can change is the quantity of an item ordered. So if someone ordered 1 helmet, but they actually want 1 more helmet, we can come in here and all items that they purchased will be available here. And we can say that Robert actually wanted 2 helmets. And this will automatically add a charge, just like it did before when Sally purchased a helmet. We can come in here and say, Robert bought 1 helmet, but he actually wants 2. And if we save this, once again, he's going to get charged for that additional helmet. And we'll see, just like before, there's now a $125 charge for 1 more bike helmet. So that's the registration alterations we have, is to cancel and make changes to an existing registration. You can do that all from this registration screen. So let me go back to my PowerPoint for our next item. The next thing we're going to look at is a wait list. So a lot of our events have the option to have a capacity set. So, maybe you can only have 20 people or 15 people or 100 people at a certain given event. If that event fills up, the way ClubExpress works normally is no one will then be able to register. We did, I think early last year, add the option for a wait list, which means once an event is filled up, people can add themselves to a wait list. And if someone cancels their registration, then a spot opens up and the people on that wait list are going to be first in line to get registration for that event. They'll actually get a special email with a special link, and I'll show you what that email looks like in just a second. So we'll talk about how to manage a wait list, and we'll also talk about the difference between an automatic and a manual wait list. So let me go ahead and swap back over to a different event that I had set up just for dealing with our wait list. So now this is a different event. This is a waitlist event that I created. It's a very, very simple event, much smaller than the CycleCon that I set up. But the only purpose for this event was just to fill it up really quickly and then cancel someone. So once you have in your registration and fees section of your event configuration, once you set a limited capacity, which this event only has a capacity of 2, you can set a waitlist capacity as well. And this is how many people are able to be on the waitlist at a time. And you'll also be able to configure how quickly that waitlist processes. So this is important if you are processing a waitlist manually or automatically versus manually. So whenever someone is notified that a spot has opened up for the waitlist, this is how long they will have to use that link that they are given to register for that event. If they don't register in time, then that spot will open up to the next person in the waitlist. There are 2 different ways to process a waitlist. There's manually and there's automatically. If you set it to automatically, the way that I personally prefer, whenever a spot opens up, the next person in line in the waitlist is going to automatically get an email letting them know that a spot has opened up with no need for an administrator to interfere. If that person doesn't sign up within the amount of waitlist hours, then it'll go on to the next person and so on and so forth. And that way you can give everyone a chance in the waitlist to sign up for whenever spots open. And then once they use that link, it'll fill up again and the waitlist resets and, the next person in line can be notified if there's another cancellation. If you do choose to set your waitlist manually, that does mean that you have complete control over who you want to allow to register next. So you can kind of jump around in line. You do have that option for control if certain people take priority for some reason. So once you have a wait list and you have people sign up for the wait list, which they would do just by clicking on, instead of saying register now, it would say add me to the wait list. Once that opens up, you can come over here. So the next option over from registrations is the wait list. And this is where we can come in and we can see a list here. I set this up, but it's not working currently. You'll see a list of everyone that has signed up for your wait list. And all you have to do is come over here. And as soon as you have a cancellation, there should be a button that shows up. I accidentally set it to automatic. And so it automatically sent this person their notice. And so now it's not working. That's my fault. But you'll have a button here that says notify next person on wait list. And it'll send that person an email and it'll say status notified instead. You also have the option, only if you do it manually, you have the option to do a first come, first serve. So there will be an additional button over here on the upper right-hand corner that says notify everyone on the wait list. And if you notify everyone, then everyone listed on the wait list, if you allow 10 people, then all 10 of those people will get an email letting them know that they can register. And the first person to fill that slot gets it. So that's the only advantage of really doing the manual waitlist is you have the option to say, it's free game. First person to get to the website signs up. I do want to give a quick preview. This is something I don't think we've shown in a previous webinar is what that email actually looks like. So let me share what that email looks like. And this is one of the customizable emails that you can edit in your system emails, but it's pretty simple. It's just saying, this is to inform you that a slot has opened up for an event. This is an email that I received earlier. And then there's 2 buttons. There's a button that says register now. And if they click on that, this is a link that's special to them. So this link won't work for anyone else except for the person that is on that wait list. So if they forward this email to someone else being like, oh, you can have this spot, that button won't work for them. Additionally, if you wish to remove yourself from the waitlist saying, actually, I can't attend, I was on the waitlist, but that was accidental, you can click remove me from the waitlist and it'll become, it'll push it over to the next person in line. So if they, for some reason, can't register, they can choose to just go ahead and immediately say, I'm not able to come, and it'll make that option available to the next person. So that's kind of how a waitlist works. It's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just a matter of making sure you know whether you've set it up manually or automatically. So the next thing we're going to talk about is tracking attendance. This one is something that usually sends a lot of people for a loop because they assume that members can track their own attendance. Attendance tracking is managed by administrators because if we allowed website tracking of attendance, a member would be able to mark their own attendance even if they hadn't shown up. And so we want to make sure that if you're going to have an attendance tracking list, that it is accurate and admin, overseen by administrators or event coordinators. If you, let's see, you do have the option when you are marking registration for members, you have the option to register them at the same time as you mark their attendance. It's important to keep in mind that if you do this, they will incur a charge for that registration if the registration has any sort of fee. So a lot of times we've seen some people who just think, oh, they showed up in person, I'll go ahead and mark their attendance and their registration. And then the next time that person logs in, they're going to get a notice that says you owe for this event registration. It's just important to know that when you are doing that. You also have the option to unmark attendance, which is the ability to say, I mark this person as attended, but they had to leave halfway through the meeting, so they don't get credit for attending that event. So let me go ahead and take you over to that attendance tracking screen and show you what that looks like. So we're back on our CycleCon over here, and the next option over from waitlist is our attendance option. So when someone attends your event, you can either track this on your phone or on a laptop in person, or you can create a list of names while you're there and come back to this at a later date. But all you have to do as an administrator is come in here and say that you want to mark attendance. And if you're tracking attendance by activity, so this is a multi-activity event, you can actually track the attendance for each individual activity. So all of my activities each day have the option to track attendance. So I can say, for day one, for the bike repair basics panel, these are the people that signed up. These are all of the registrants, and I can say whether or not they attended this event. And if I check this off, all that means is that those people are marked as having shown up for that event. So if I hit save, now whenever I run my attendance reports, those 3 people that I just checked off are going to be marked as having attended the bike repair panel. I keep clicking on waitlist. If we click on attendance, we have a similar option. So if we go and click our bike repair basics, this is our unmark option, which is there's those 3 names that I checked. And I can say, actually, Ray had to leave 5 minutes in. And I can remove Ray, and now he is no longer marked as attending. It's a pretty simple tool, just a matter of checking off and unchecking who attended. This is a multi-activity event. For multi-activity events, there is not an option to register and mark attendance at the same time. So there is a third button here that is missing, and that is missing because this is a multi-activity event. If this were a single activity event, there would be a third option here that functions just like the other 2. It's just a checkbox. The third option says register and mark attendance. And when you check that option, it's going to give you a list of all of your members, and you can check off members that showed up in person but had not registered ahead of time. And that will simultaneously register them and mark them as having attended. So if you have board meetings and you need to track attendance for your board meetings, you can register them and mark them as attended at the same time if someone shows up who maybe, you're not tracking registration beforehand or something of that sort. It is an important note. Again, I'll just drive this home because this is something we get support calls about regularly. If there's a fee associated with your event and you mark someone and register them at the same time using that third option that should be here on this page, they will get charged for that. So make sure that you're aware of that whenever you're marking someone as attended. The next thing we're going to go over is our waivers. So this is kind of our release agreement, our waivers. That's something you set up over here in our policy section. So if you have an event waiver, a release agreement for releasing liability for an in-person event or even a virtual event, just saying, by attending, you are accepting that you have to do this. Whenever you have people sign up for one of your events, you can collect a liability agreement from them. And it's just a simple kind of checkbox that they have to check that says, I have read and agree to these terms. Most of our organizations that have this, actually one of the reasons I chose to go with a bike event is because if you're having an in-person event that has any sort of physical activity like riding bikes or a motorcycle meetup or a car meet, and you want to make sure that your organization isn't liable, you may have some sort of release agreement that states that the organization is not liable for any damages or injuries or things like that. And if you want to go back and make sure that everyone has signed off on it, there is a report for that. And we'll be talking about reports next, but specifically, I want to go jump down to the waiver date report. So this is the report that will show you who signed up and who has signed the waiver, and it'll actually give you an exact time and date that they signed that waiver. So when you run the report, I didn't sign the waiver for most of my people, but you'll see here, Ori Rivers did actually sign the waiver on this exact date. She signed the waiver this morning at 10:09 a.m. The rest of these people have not yet signed the waiver because it is marked, there is no date here. So if there's no date and time filled in here, that means those people have not signed the waiver. That's still okay. We have a way to deal with that if there are people who have not filled out the waiver. You can print that report out ahead of time, and you can actually collect waivers in person. So again, back on this policy page, there is an additional option called a quick release. So once you have a waiver set up, you can enable a quick release. And if you set this to yes, then that enables an extra part of your event called a quick release. So if we go back to our main event, just by checking yes, you will add this option right here on your event that says sign quick release. This button will only show up for administrators. So because I'm logged in as Martin Smith right now, who is an administrator, I have this sign quick release option. If I'm not signed in as an event coordinator or as an admin, this button will not show up. So what I can do is in person at my event, I can go on my phone or my laptop and click on sign quick release. And I can then hand my phone or give the laptop over to whoever needs to sign the waiver. And there's the waiver. They can check off, they say, I agree to these terms. They fill in their name, their last name, and their email address. And then there's a field for them to fill in a signature. And if you have, a mouse, or if you have a touch screen, they can fill in a signature right here. And they can put in their signature and sign off on that. And that collects that they have then signed off on this event for whatever the liability agreement is. Once they sign off on that, they will also get an email that confirms that they have agreed to the liability. So there's a paper trail, a digital paper trail for them to track that they did agree to that liability. You can also track all of those signatures and when they signed it by going back to your event over here. And the last item in the list is going to be your quick releases. And this will show you everyone that signed off on the quick release, exactly when and where they did. So you can see here's, my signature that I did with my mouse, so it looks horrible. But if they do it with their finger, normally it looks a little bit better. But essentially, this is just a print release that they can sign off on. If you click this print release info, this will give you a PDF report of everyone that signed off on the quick release waiver. And then there's their signatures right there, the date and time that they signed it. So if you have, in-person events and someone shows up and they're not on the list of people that have signed off on the waiver, or maybe they didn't even register ahead of time and they're showing up in person without registering, you can still enforce your release agreement by making them read it on a digital device and sign off that way. So the next thing we're going to talk about for our managing active events are the two different types of reporting that we have for our events, which are our standard reports, which are built with the Crystal Reports tool, or our exports. The biggest difference between a report and an export is that reports are kind of just canned reports and they're only going to return certain information. Our exports always means it's just a bulk data dump. So anytime you run an export, it's going to give you a CSV file, which is just an unformatted Excel file that you can then sort and pare down as you need. But it's going to give you all of the data based on it. So when we click on this report option, you see we have tons of reports and they're all very specific about what they're going to collect. But we only have a few exports because each of these exports gives you every bit of data related with it. So if you export waitlist data, it'll give you every single bit of information about everyone that signed up for the export or for the waitlist. If you run the registration data, it's going to give you all of your registrations and then who is a part of that. Registrant data is going to be slightly different than registration data, which is going to give you all the information about the individual headcount for your event. So again, registrations is going to only look at primary registrants. So if I sign up and I'm bringing 5 extra people, that would be one registration. If you want to know each individual, that would be registrant data, which is going to be, each of those people that signed up will get their own line. And there's all sorts of different options here. There's things for activities. If you're running a multi-activity event, there's information on payments that have been collected. And there's also registrant data, which is just like this one above, but with emergency contact info as well. And then you have the option to filter it down based on if they've paid or not. So you can say, whether they've canceled or whether they paid or whether they haven't paid yet. Open means they haven't paid yet. They still need to. So those are our event exports. Again, they just give you a raw CSV file, which then you can manipulate to your own needs. The reports that you get here, I do want to highlight a few really interesting reports. You do have your quick release report. That's the same PDF that you get by clicking on this quick release over here. One that I use a lot is our event registrants report. It's deceptively simple, but it's going to give you pretty much all the information you need about each individual that is registered for your event. And it can also, you can also get as specific as doing things like printing name tags. So there's all different types of printing name tags with companies and different bits of information on different name tags, as well as printing mailing labels. If you are sending, paper mail or sending packages to people that attended your event, maybe they bought something or, participated in some sort of raffle, there are mailing labels that you can send to all of the people that attended your event. So that can give you mailing labels for those people without you having to go in and copy and paste their address. It'll just give you little square mailing labels for each person that attended. You can cut out the ones you need. There's one more section where you can get reports, and that's actually over here in our activities and items section. So instead of going to this top bar, each of our activities, if you're running a multi-activity event, has its own little reports section. So you'll see these are all of my different activities. We talked about this page last week, but each of these activities can have its own little report, and each of these has activity registrants and registrants with answers. And when it says with answers, that means there is some sort of question that the registrant was asked when they registered. So maybe, what size is your t-shirt? What color car do you drive? Whatever question you ask them when they sign up for the event, this report right here is where you can get the information about what answers they had for that specific activity. So don't forget, if you're running a really large, convention style event, you do have your overarching reports up here in your reports and exports, but you can also get detailed reports about each of these. So if I have, my bike repair basics, if I know the person that's presenting that wants detail on the people that are going to show up for that, I can run one of my reports here and give the presenter for bike repair basics a bit of a head count, letting him know, oh, hey, you'll have 20 people in the room. So you can prepare for that, accordingly. So the next thing we're going to cover is the after the event section. This is something I kind of, I go back and forth on the necessity of this, but in recent days, I've actually come to really appreciate it. So this is a way for you to present information either immediately or after the event about the event itself. So there's two different things on this page. The configuration for this is very, very simple. For the event report option, all you do is select an existing custom page. It's going to give you a drop-down list of all of the custom pages on your website. You pick one from the list and it adds a link to it either immediately on the event page or after the event, which means once the event date has passed, it will show up on the event. Similarly, with Club photo albums, it's the same thing. All of your existing photo albums are going to show up here. And then you can the same way choose immediately or after the event. The nice thing about specifically the photo albums is you can configure a photo album to be editable by members, meaning people that show up for the event can take pictures of the event and then come back to the website, click on photo albums or click on the photo album for the event, and then they can upload their photos. So there's kind of like a communal library of photos taken at that event that other people can share and look at. So let me show you, once you've selected these, what that looks like. If we go back to our event page, this is the event landing page you find when you click on the event on the calendar. And you'll see there's two pages right here, event report and event album. And if we click on event report, it's going to take us to this custom page. And I just kind of picked a custom page at random, but you can make this page say whatever you want. Information about your different panels, information about your speakers, information about attendees. You can even put pictures from the event on this page. And then the next option down here, event album, this is just going to take us to the album that we selected. So it'll take us to our photo albums page and it'll already open up the album that we have selected. And then you can scroll through and look at the different pictures from this event. If you have this configured for member uploads, then there's an option over in the right-hand section for members to upload their own photos to this album. So a very, very fun tool to collect photos from your event. The reason I always say, it's not necessarily, needed is we do always have our formatted description where you can add those links yourself if you want to come in here and just manually create a link to either of those pages. This just gives you an easily configurable way to do that. All right, I'm running a little early. So Sam, I'm sure we have a million questions.
We had some, and some of them were really great. So, a couple that we'll just sort of reiterate. One of the questions that came up was if we have that 30-minute time limit set for registration, meaning that you're forcing your registrants to pay for the event within 30 minutes. Otherwise, they sacrifice their registration spot. What happens when, as an administrator, you might add something to that registration? So in those cases where you're making some of the changes that Devin highlighted, that 30-minute time limit is ignored. So you don't have to worry about your members maybe losing out on something that you've added to their registration for them simply because they missed that email. So keep that in mind. There were a lot of questions about the wait list. Another question that came in was when that email goes out to your members who might be waitlisted to let them know that they have a spot that's opened up for registration, the email does not actually include the waitlist time limit. So we're certainly going to pass that information on to our developers, but
I believe it does.
Does it? Okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
seeing the tag in the system email for the time limit, but we'll double check that. And if it isn't included, we'll go ahead and add that to our developers wish list. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
It is there.
So,
Okay.
so you have 6 hours from the time of this notification. If it is set to 0, that will not show up. So if you have your waitlist hours set to 0, that means it's unlimited. But I only sent this yesterday, so this is the way it currently looks. It does include the time limit. It doesn't give you like this will end at 6:42 p.m. or anything like that. It just says from the time that you received it, and then they can do the math from their own, what time they received it.
And there were some questions about credits to registrants and refunds to registrants. So keep in mind that a credit is issued to the registrant and it's not the same as the registrant getting refunded. So a couple of times in the chat, I posted a link to the webinar that we hosted on using our refund account. So if you're interested in setting up something like that, go ahead and take a look at that video and give support a call if you're ready to get something like that set up for your own website. And that would allow you to refund your members directly to their credit card, as opposed to having credit sit on their account or potentially having to send them a check. And let's peruse for some more questions. Another question, is there a time limit to be able to track attendance? So if you hosted an event maybe 3 months ago and you just got around to taking attendance for that event, or maybe cross-referencing a Zoom registrant list with who actually registered on your website, is there a time limit on that? Or should they be able to access the attendance option anytime for any event?
No, as long as you're an administrator or an event coordinator, you're able to go in and modify that at will. Yeah, so there's no time limit for that.
Let's see. So there are a couple of other questions that popped in at the very last minute.
I do see one. How can you cancel a registration for a primary registrant without losing the guests? There is not currently a way to do that. If you need to cancel the primary registrant, then any guests that they signed up underneath them would also be canceled. Those guests can still then, register themselves, but there's not currently a way to cancel the primary without canceling the guests.
And is there a webinar on setting up photo albums? There sure is. So if you go to our YouTube channel and you click the small search icon in our channel and you search for photo albums, you will see we have definitely one webinar and one tutorial. We likely have a couple of different ones, and you can look through those and get yourself some photo albums set up for your after event screen. And how long does the system retain event information, so registrant information, after the event has passed? I don't think that there's a time limit on that either.
Yeah, there's no, we store all, unless you go through and manually delete everything in the event, we store just about every piece of information tied to an event indefinitely. And there's no limit to that storage. So don't necessarily worry about that. Data storage is very easy. And so we're never going to dump information about an event.
And there were a couple of questions about reports. So one question was that some of the, or a note was that some of the reports that include registrant answers to questions don't always show the answer. So if you are experiencing a report output that doesn't include data that you expected it to include, shoot that over to our support team. We'll take a look at that and open up a ticket if that needs to happen. But if you are experiencing issues like that, especially with the reports, please let us know. And someone else had asked if there was a report for ride leaders. So for bike clubs, ride leaders need a list of the riders' cell numbers and emergency contact info. So you can certainly pair those questions up. If you go back to last week's webinar and take a look at event configuration and administration, we do talk about setting up those event questions and specifically how to utilize questions that you may already ask your members in events. So you likely, if you are collecting emergency contact information for an event, you may already have collected that with the member sign up. So go back and watch our last week webinar, event configuration and administration. I also dropped a link to that in the chat as well. And you can see how you can sort of make the systems data work for you. And then of course, after that, we also have a bunch of reports, like I said, that have those answers. And of course, if you are experiencing an issue with those answers not coming up, go ahead and give our support team a call.
Yeah. And someone did ask me to clarify. So for primary registrants, what I'm talking about, there, when you go to your registration section, the name under registrant here is always going to be the primary registrant, but you'll notice some of these number of registrations have multiple. So for example, Robert Brown over here, he's the primary registrant. He signed himself up, but he signed up 6 other people at the same time. And so there's a total of 7 people coming. If it ever just says 1 here, that means the only person coming. So, you know, I signed up for this event, there's my name, but I only signed myself up. And so it's only 1. But if you're bringing guests, there can be up to 7. And if you're making changes, you can't remove the primary person, but you can remove any of the 6 people. So I could remove any of the 6 people that Robert is planning on bringing, but the 7th person, Robert himself, I'm not able to remove. And when you're creating an event, there are settings, and you can look at our event creation tutorials and webinars that include information about how to set up an event that allows guests. If your event doesn't allow guests, then that's not something you have to worry about. Each individual would register alone. And one other something I've seen people talking about is the reset event function. That is something that I definitely should have included. I'm just now realizing. So a lot of you may have seen on this screen a new button that was added a few months ago, which is the reset event down here in the bottom left. A lot of people are kind of scared of this button because reset is slightly misleading. It doesn't change anything about your event. If I hit reset and say okay to resetting the event, all of my registrations are still there. No one's removed. None of the settings of my event have been changed. What it does is it goes into our database behind the scene and it refreshes essentially the cache of the event. So those of you who are familiar with how websites work, you know, when you're looking at a web page, you're actually looking at the data on your computer. If you hit reset event, it's going to wipe all of the information that is only local and reset the event for you. So you're seeing exactly what's happening on the database, not necessarily only on your computer. So it's not going to hurt anything. You don't need to be afraid of the button. You can click it all you need. It's just going to make sure that you're seeing the most up-to-date bit of information about the event. So if you're having any sort of problems or glitches or something's not loading right, you can hit reset event and it should give it a little kick. Yeah, we are talking to our development team about possibly naming it refresh or something like that instead of reset, because it's slightly misleading.
I think that the questions have died down a bit.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for showing up today. I know managing events, especially complex ones like, you know, multi-activity events can be, daunting at times, but don't forget that our support team is here for you as well. So if you're ever, not able to find a certain report, or something is not coming out correctly, don't be afraid to call our support team. That's what they're there for. And also don't be afraid to come back and rewatch the event configuration and the event in media res webinars that will be on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, and we will see you next time.